Hello, everybody. I'm Scott Stevens. I want to thank you for tuning into the program today. And we're going to switch gears a little bit here today, kind of going off of what we've been talking about, because I've been organizing files on my computer, and I ran across this old file. It was one of the first ones I ever put up on YouTube back in October of 2009. So the video quality is not going to be nearly as good. I mean, technology, that was 11 years ago, and you'll see it 10 and a half to 11 years ago. Looked kind of janky. I mean, I was using Flash Player. I had to use Adobe Flash to put this thing together. That's how old it is. I don't even know they have that anymore. But I'll go ahead and I'll start it up here for you in just a second, because I want to remind you, Jesus does not change. God does not change. What he was doing 2,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, he's doing today, and he'll be doing it in the future too. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And, you know, with all the political stuff going on right now and where we're at, we can easily get our focus off of what Jesus has called us to do. And part of the Great Commission was to go into all the world, preach the gospel to every creature, and whoever believes and is baptized will be saved, whoever does not be condemned. And it goes on to say, and these signs will follow them that believe. In my name they'll cast out demons. If they drink anything deadly, it won't harm them. They'll take up serpents. If they drink anything deadly, it won't harm them. They'll lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. And Jesus is still in the healing business. And when we're going through the times we're getting ready to go through, you need to know that God is your healer, and he wants you to be healed. And that's what I want to be sharing with you in this video. And like I said, the video quality is not as good as what I used to have, or the video quality back then is not as good as what we got now. And mine's by no means anything to be looked up to, but it's the message. And I think you'll be very encouraged. And one of the things I talk about, I bring up, and I've looked back, I tried to find her. I mentioned, I thought it was Hallie Kate Eisenberg, the little white girl with the dark curly brown hair in the Pepsi commercial. But even before her, I think it was in the 80s, there was this, I wish somebody could show me the video or send a link to it. But there was an older black man in his 60s in one of these soda pop commercials. I don't know if it was Coke, I don't know if it was Pepsi, and there was this little white girl with brown curly hair, and she looked a lot like Hallie Kate Eisenberg. But one of the girls that I want to mention that I saw during this miracle, it reminded me of that girl. So I know at the time that this miracle occurred was 1993, October, last week in October of 1993, and Hallie Kate Eisenberg would have only been like 2 years old at that time. But when I'm telling the story, I'm telling you the story in 2009, trying to remember clear back to 1993. So at the time that I made this video, it was 16 years after the miracle had occurred. But anyway, enough said about that. Sit back, enjoy the video. Hello, I'm Scott Stevens. It's October 25th, 2009. And I want to talk to you about the gift of healings. God is still in the miracle working business today. He said, these signs will follow them that believe. In my name they'll cast out demons, they'll speak with new tongues. If they drink anything deadly, it shall not harm them. They'll lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. This is for the believer. This isn't for anybody special. This is just for the believer. They will lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. I'll never forget back in 1993, October 23rd, well, July 25th, the pastor had given a word. He said, change, change, change. I'm going over this real quick. Soon in 90 days, I'm going to do a new thing in your ministry. I went home, marked on my calendar. 90 days later, came home. On the 90th day, got a phone call. It was a lady called up. She said, hello, this is Linda. I'm a friend of your mother's. I need you to call me back up. God had told me He was going to do a new thing in my ministry on that day. It was going to be healing. The lady had called up on day 90. I called her back up. She told me about a man she'd been praying for. God had told her the previous night to call me up. The only way I knew this lady, she had attended a Bible study that my parents had attended. And other than maybe I had been introduced to her one time, I don't even remember it. Hello, this is my son, Scott, this is Linda and her husband. That was all the more contact I'd ever had with this woman. But she'd called me up, said the Lord had said to call me up. So she called me up. I went down to the hospital, prayed for this guy who was a no-code. They'd said he was going to die in 2 or 3 days. I told the man the Lord told me to tell him in 2 to 3 days he was walking out of there with a brand new set of lungs. And 2 days later, he walked out of the hospital with a brand new set of lungs. The doctor even wrote miracle across the x-rays on the after x-ray. And anyway, after that had happened on August the 25th, my wife and I, we were excited about that. My parents, a lot of other people were excited about this healing we had seen. But my wife was saying, well, what's next? I said, man, I don't know. God will show us what's next. Well, anyway, a few days later, got a call on the telephone while I was at home. My wife was just finishing cooking some Mexican food that night. The phone rang, and my wife answered the phone, and I was in the bathroom. I'd been washing my hands and combing my hair back, just getting cleaned up. And my wife says, here he is, he's on or he's here right now, I'll let you talk to him. So I knew it had to be somebody in my family, and I picked up the phone, and she mouthed the words to me, it's your mother. My mom's on the phone, and she tells me, Scott, Linda, the nurse at St. Francis Hospital, just called up, and she wants you to pray. You don't have to go down there. She just wants you to pray. Her nephew, and I think her nephew's name was Kenny, I'm not certain, but her nephew, Kenny, just had his wife just had their first baby, and the baby is in bad shape. It can't eat any food. It's not able to hold any food down right now. They can't feed it, and they're worried that the baby's going to die, and she just wanted you to pray for the baby. I said, well, okay, I'll pray for it. I got off the phone, and I guess my mother had already talked to my wife and informed my wife of what the phone call was about. My wife, she's looking at me with anticipation. It's like, are you going to go to the hospital? Are you going to go? And I just turned to her and said, baby, unless God tells me to go, I'm not going to the hospital. I'll pray for the baby, but I'm not going unless God tells me to go. So she went back in the kitchen, and my oldest daughter, who at the time I think was like 6 years old, yeah, she had just turned 6, and she was in there helping her mother. And I'm just being as serious and real. This may gross some people out, or you say it's not using tact, but I was in there I was using the restroom, relieving myself, and I finished, and I went over to the sink, and I started to wash my hands. And when I looked at myself in the mirror, right then, it's just like, in my voice, it just boomed. It said, go. And I knew that was God talking right then. And I walked in the kitchen, and I said, honey, I'll be back. God said, go. I'm going to the hospital. And my little daughter, who was 6 years old at the time, she said, wait, Daddy, wait, Daddy. She had on her mom's T-shirt, and it was hanging clear down to the ground. Had a little underwear on and a T-shirt that went all the way to the ground. She said, you can't go yet. And she put together a little soft tortilla and threw some sour cream on it and wrapped it up. And it may have had a little bit of lettuce on it. And she wrapped it up in tinfoil and said, here, Daddy, take this with you so you'll have something to eat. And I hopped in the car, and it was dark. And when I hopped in the car, I backed out, and I started on my way. I was about 3 miles from St. Francis Hospital where I lived. And as I had driven the first mile, I was praying in the Spirit. And when I was praying in tongues, praying in the Spirit, it was just real strong in me. And I was praying in this unknown language, and all of a sudden, I just heard the voice of God go off. He said, do you want to know what you're praying about? And I said, yes, I would. That'd be very nice to know. He said, and he just started giving me the interpretation on what I'd been praying. He said, Scott, that baby's having trouble with its heart right now. It's having trouble breathing. But he said, I'm going to breathe on that baby. And when he said that, excitement exploded inside of me. Because he said, I'm going to breathe on that baby. And I'm going to put a new heart in that baby. And when I put a new heart in that baby, it's never going to have trouble breathing again. And immediately, Ezekiel chapter 36 came to my mind, where the Lord said he was going to put a new heart and a new spirit in his people. Not that heart of flesh, not something normal. This was going to be something that he did. And I was on the way to the hospital. When he said that, all of a sudden I just burst out in laughter. It was uncontrollable laughter. I was laughing so hard I was hyperventilating. The sides of my head right here, these muscles were sore. And I got to the parking lot at St. Francis Hospital. It was dark. And when I got there, I finally composed myself. I quit laughing enough. Settled down. I thought, let me get out of the car now. I'm going up there. And I went up. I can't even remember what floor. Well, I think it was the 4th floor, but I'm not certain. Where this nurse, Linda, was working. But before I even got into the hospital, as I started walking in the parking lot, there was a man who had come out, and he, a lot of people when they go to the hospital, it's not for a good reason, and you could tell by the discouragement and the despair that was on this man's face that he had a loved one in that hospital who wasn't doing too good, and you could just see it all over the man's face. And I'm walking through the parking lot, and he looks at me as I'm walking by, and all of a sudden I just cracked up laughing uncontrollably. I couldn't help myself. I was laughing so hard, and I walked up this ramp that led into the lobby of St. Francis Hospital, got on the escalator, and then got on an elevator, and when I was just laughing so hard I couldn't hardly see straight. And finally I settled down, got out of the elevator, and I walked across, and I saw Linda there, and I said, man, I'm telling you, you're getting ready to see another miracle right now, because I've been praying, and God told me on the way over here he's putting a new heart in that baby. I said, call them up, tell me where they're at. So she calls up, like I said, I think his name was Kenny, calls him up on the telephone down to the room and says, can you come up here? Scott's here right now. And I was just, man, I was so sure of myself. I knew that I knew God was going to heal that boy. And I was telling Linda about it when all of a sudden the elevator doors opened up, and she looked up and saw her nephew and his father coming into the room. And I just walked straight over to him with all the resolve in the world, threw out my hand, and I said, hello, I'm Scott Stevens, and I'm here to tell you right now. Here's these two people. You can imagine, this is your firstborn child, a son. And the firstborn, man, this is a very special one to God. The firstborn, God said, belongs to me. And this is the first baby that's being born to this young man, and they've told him it's going to die. It's got complications with its heart. It can't breathe. It can't hold down food. It can't even eat. This little baby boy, and they're devastated, as you can imagine. And I'll never forget the boy's father. He was hurting more for his boy than his son was hurting. And when I come over there, I just grabbed his hand and I said, I'm here to tell you right now, God is going to put a new heart in your baby. Your baby is not going to have any trouble eating after tonight. Your baby is not going to have any trouble breathing after tonight. And when I was saying this, I was so pumped up and excited and just full of confidence. At the same time, it was like I was having an out-of-body experience, because it was like I was standing, the natural me was standing outside looking at the spiritual me and saying, how can you be saying these kind of things to this guy? What if he doesn't get healed? That was the natural man talking to me. The spirit man took over. Said, this baby's going to be healed. And I walked down, and we got in the elevator. I said, well, tell me what's going on with the baby. And we went down or up wherever the room was at, this intensive care unit for the babies. And when we got to the ICU for the babies, we walked off into a side room, and I was with, like I said, I think his name was Kenny. And I said, Kenny, tell me what's going on with your baby. And we're looking through the glass at these babies in these incubators in this intensive care unit. And there's another lady sitting down on a bench, and she's sitting in there, and he starts telling me, he said, well, Scott, there's 7 different things wrong with our baby's heart. And any one of these 7 by itself, without the other 6, just each one of the 7 by itself would kill the baby. And I looked at him and I said, 7? That's a nice round biblical number. Just like that. And I turned around and looked, and this lady that's sitting on a bench there, she's about 5 to 10 years older than me, she looks at me like, how can you dare to talk to a man with such a flippant attitude when he's going through one of the worst crises in his entire life? But I said, keep telling me what's going on. And Kenny's explaining it to me, and I said, yeah, 7, that's a nice round biblical number. I said, it don't matter how many things are wrong with that baby. I said, God told me he's putting a new baby. He's putting a new heart in your baby, and your baby ain't going to have any trouble eating. Your baby ain't going to have any trouble breathing. Your baby ain't going to have any trouble circulating his blood. And I started telling him about the miracle that had happened earlier that week where the man had his lungs restored and God put a new set of lungs in him. And as I was telling him about that previous miracle, you could see the hope that was being birthed in his countenance. And when we got finished there, he said, come here, I want you to talk to my parents. So I walked back out, and I'm talking to Kenny's mother, and I'm talking to Kenny's father, and I'm telling them, and I'm talking to the mother's mother, and we're standing around talking, and I am just so full of faith and excitement. It's like, God sent me here because your baby's going to be healed. Now, let's get it on right now. And when I told him about the young man who I'd prayed for the earlier that week or the previous Saturday, how God had healed him, finally they wheeled the mother out. And the mother came out, she was in a wheelchair, and they told me to tell the story again. So for the 3rd time, Kenny's hearing the story. For the 2nd time, his parents are hearing the story, and this girl's hearing the story. And man, you can just see the excitement, the anticipation, the faith. It's exploding. And the father, Kenny's father, turns to a nurse and says, you let this man of God in there to pray for that, lay hands on that baby and pray for it right now. And the nurse said, you know the rules, only immediate family can go into the intensive care unit. And we're standing around. I said, man, it don't matter. I said, it ain't me going to heal that baby. It's the Holy Spirit. The Holy Ghost can reach through glass and he can heal that baby. It ain't me going to heal your baby anyway. And anyway, we just sat there and I said, we're going to pray for that baby right now. I prayed for that baby, thanking God that he was going to put a new heart in that baby just like he had promised. And that firstborn, that baby he was going to be dedicated to the Lord. He was going to be a testimony to the Lord. And I finished praying, and they thanked me. They were hugging me, shaking my hand, thanked me for coming by. And I said, man, there's no use in me staying around. This is his deal. I'm on out of here. I got to get back home, and I got to eat. My babies are home waiting on me right now. And I walked out the door, and just overflowing. I was dripping and radiating with confidence. And as soon as the door shut behind me, these automatic doors shut in the hospital, I'm walking down the hall, and all of a sudden the laughter hits me again. And it hits me so I'm cracking up. I've just got the joy of the Lord, and I can't hardly stand up. I'm laughing so hard. And there was this little girl in the hall, and she had her little baby doll, and she was clutching her baby doll. But when she saw me, kids, they pick things up in the spirit. But when this baby, or not this baby, she reminded me so much of that little curly-headed, dark, curly hair on that little white girl that was in the Pepsi commercial. I don't know her name, but anybody that Hallie Kate Eisenberg may have been her name, I think. But Anyway, this little girl looked like the spitting image of her. Just the cutest little curls, big brown eyes, and she looked up and she saw me and she wasn't afraid of me at all. She was just smiling. And they were waiting in the elevator landing, and they'd got in the elevator, and I got in the elevator, and I couldn't control the laughter. And the parents got out of the elevator. They thought, man, this man done lost his mind. And the little girl, she was just kind of, through her eyes, she was saying bye and just had the biggest grin and smile on her face. And I got in the car, and it was all I could do to get to my car. I was laughing so hard. And finally, I wasn't going to drive home like that. I waited till I could quit laughing. When I quit laughing, I started driving home. And God said to me in these words, he said, I'm not Orthodox. And when he said, I'm not Orthodox, I was just dying laughing. I was cracking up. That was just hilarious to me. Because in my mind, I was thinking, well, God's not like one of these old stuffy churches or whatever who are so stuck on tradition and God said and stuff like that. So that was my understanding of Orthodox. And about the time I was thinking along those lines, God said, I'm not unorthodox. Well, I understood what he was saying. It didn't have anything to do with that God stuff. I'm not Orthodox, but I'm not unorthodox either. Well, that just cracked me up too. I was just dying laughing. And I was about a mile away from the house, taking a back way home. And I pulled up in the driveway, and God said, I'm God. I got out of the car, I was laughing so hard. I looked like a drunk man. I really was. I was physically drunk from laughter. I couldn't get my key into the lock hardly. When I finally got the key through the deadbolt lock, I opened the door to my house. I fell through the front room door. I fell into the floor on the foyer. I crawled across the living room floor, got up in the seat, and I was just howling and cackling and laughing. I couldn't stop the laughter. It was hurting. I would laugh so hard I couldn't stop. And my wife was taking a shower with our little 6-year-old daughter. And I went into the kitchen. I finally settled down. I went into the kitchen. The laughter hit me again. I fell down. I got up. And I went in there. And she came in. My wife and daughter, they'd toweled off and put some clothes on. And she said, what is going on? And I said, man, God, he told me he's not Orthodox. He told me he's not unorthodox. He just said, I'm God. And I said, God put a new heart in that baby. God healed that baby. I know it. And she said, man, we were in there. And she said, your daughter and I, and taking a shower. And she said, your little daughter said, Mom, I think that burrito that I gave to Dad made him crazy. Anyway, to make a long story short, 4 or 5 days later, we got a phone call. And it was from my mother. And she said, Linda called up and wanted you to know that Kenny and his father, they believe in you and your ministry. And they wanted to thank you for coming by. And they wanted to let you know they let the child go home. They said they had done every test over the last 3 days that they could do on that baby. The doctor said he does not understand because the way the blood is pumping through the heart and the way the heart is working, physically it shouldn't work. It doesn't make any scientific sense. There's no reason or logic, but that heart is working perfectly, even though the way it's designed right now, it shouldn't even work. And she said, Kenny told the doctor, he said, no, it should work because it's God. And the doctor said, no, it's just you're lucky, or something along the lines of it's just luck. And Kenny was ready to fight it. He said, no, it's God. And the doctor said, no, it's just you're lucky. And he said, no, it's God. And Kenny he wanted the credit to go where the credit was due. But when my mama told me that on the phone, she said they're trying to peel the nurses off the ceiling. They're so excited down there right now. And when I hung up the phone, the Lord reminded me, he said, I told you I'm not Orthodox. I told you I'm not unorthodox. I said, I'm God. And I said, I'm going to put a new heart in that baby. And if you go back and look up that word new in the Hebrew, it means something that's never before been invented. It's new in quality, new in style. It's something that's never even existed. He said, the reason that baby's heart works is because I put a new heart in there, something they've never seen before. And it didn't work because it's orthodox like everybody else. It doesn't work because it's not unorthodox or because it's unorthodox. It works because I put my heart in there. It's a God heart. I don't care what you're going through. I don't care what kind of a miracle you need right now. The same God that healed that baby wants to heal you. He said, and Jesus said, if you ask anything in my name, I'll do it. And Greek scholars have said it means that even if he doesn't have it, he'll make it. He made the entire universe out of nothing. And I don't care what you're going through, what kind of ailment you have, what you're missing, or how it's messed up, my God can fix it. Not only can he fix it, he wants to fix it. He wants you totally well so that he can use you to bring glory to his name and press people into his kingdom. I'm Scott Stevens, and I want to remind you, the rest of your days are the best of your days.